Pop Talk and Aliens, the William Cleere podcast.
Thank you, honey. Yes, right as always, my name is William Cleere. This is Pop Talk and Aliens, and it is a podcast. And I am very pleased to be joined for the second time in this run of the show by Bobby Chastain. Bobby is the executive director?
That's right.
The executive director of KMVT Television in Mountain View for the last million years, producing more sporting events than you could shake a stick at. And in addition to that, worked for CBS Sports for a few years. Interviewed Warriors. Spent time in the Warriors locker room. Actually hung out at Donyell Marshall's house. So, qualified speaker to talk about the NBA Finals of 2016.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on. I love having basketball discussions with you, and I can't think of one with more weight than this one.
Well, yeah, and weight's the right word because the Warriors, of course, our very favorite team, recently lost the NBA Finals to Cleveland. Cleveland actually today having their parade, I noticed. So.
Oh, that's nice. Good for them.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a rough week or so since the Warriors took a 3-1 lead and then they blew it. And it sort of happened in slow motion as those things do, and now I think everyone's feeling pretty bad.
Yes, we are. I should qualify that we are both dyed-in-the-wool Warrior fans, so this discussion will probably reflect that point of view. We'll try to be kind of objective, but probably not too much. So is this the Warriors blowing a 3-1 lead in the finals? 32 times it had happened before. No one had ever come back from a 3-1 lead. It's the biggest collapse in NBA history, yes?
I think that's fair to say because of the stakes. It was the NBA Finals and 3-1. No one has blown on any level in NBA anyway, 3-0. So, just numbers-wise, it's tied, right? And
right.
It's the first time that it's been in the finals. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say biggest collapse.
Would you say in sports history?
No, I don't think so in sports history, just because there have been 3-0, and baseball particularly lent itself to big regular season collapses. So, you hear of, the 51 Dodgers or the 78 Red Sox blowing, double-digit game leads in the last month or so. So that's, you talk about slow motion. So this happened over the course of a week, 3 games. Those happen over the course of a month, 6 weeks, and it's based on 85% of the season, and then it kind of falls apart over time. So I don't think it's the biggest collapse in sports history or professional sports history, but NBA for sure.
And with the, now that I think about it, the baseball, they also had the 2004 Red Sox coming back against the Yankees, which was 3-0.
Right.
And at that point, that had never happened either.
That's right.
So that would rank up there.
Right.
Probably more than Warriors.
Yeah, I think so. But like I said, baseball sort of lends itself more to these epic collapses. College basketball, not at all. There's no way to have that kind of collapse. In NBA, in the regular season, you're not going to collapse because you're going to miss out on being the 8th seed, where you have no chance anyway.
Right.
So you can always kind of ride it in the playoffs. So the only opportunities for an NBA collapse, the way we're talking about it, I think would be in the later rounds of the postseason, conference finals, and finals. So this has to rank number one.
Especially because not only was it the biggest collapse, but down to a minute and 9 seconds, tied, that close,
right,
and to blow it.
And the end of that game, and maybe the whole game, was sort of a microcosm of the Warriors' season and postseason, where they had a lead at halftime, they blew it, they regained it. And then, their last basket in that game was with 4 minutes, 39 seconds. Klay Thompson had a layup.
That's so disgusting.
And after that, they didn't score, not once. So, and Cleveland wasn't scoring either for 3.5 of those minutes. So it really ratcheted up the tension where they'd come down and they'd heave up a shot and you'd hope it would go in and then no, and you kind of put your arms behind your head and Cleveland came back down the court and they'd fire one up and you'd be so relieved every time they missed. And then finally, after 3.5 minutes of that, and just terrible shots, 8 in a row they missed. One air ball by Curry, that was a 3-pointer. Kyrie finally hits the 3, and from there it just felt pretty hopeless, which is amazing because the Warriors have come down from more than 3 points in a minute left. But it just at that point it felt like the air was out.
Well, Steph Curry made an interesting and, to my mind, sickening comment after the game where he said, I don't know the exact quote, but essentially what he said was, when he talked about the Warriors taking some crazy shots at the end, he said, we were at home and we were looking for the dagger. And I'm like, the hell are you doing looking for a dagger? Just score. A dagger, in my mind, comes when you've got like a 6-point lead. There's like a couple minutes to go, a minute and a half. You drain a 3, it makes it 9. All of a sudden, it's 3 possessions, and that's basically it. You can't, when you're tied, a 3-pointer with 2 minutes to go is not a dagger.
For sure. And I thought that, this is, I think the last Game 7 in the finals was LA. Well, no, there was the San Antonio, Miami. But before that, there was LA, Boston. And in the fourth quarter, in a very similar game, it was very close down the stretch, and Kobe Bryant just kept attacking the basket and, getting the points,
Right.
And that's where the Warriors were in Game 7. Was it looked like they had no energy, and they were just sort of heaving it up from 3-point, and they weren't getting good shots, and you just see their body language looked very bad. And you just wanted someone to get the ball and go inside, draw a foul or something, just break this streak of not scoring, which ended up being the entire end of the game, 4 minutes 39
Yes.
seconds. And I think out of those 8 shots, there was the LeBron block on a layup, but other than that, I think maybe 6 of those 8 shots were 3-pointers, and none of them were very good. You could see Steph sort of you could see his mindset. Now that you said that he said that, and by the way, since that game, I've been pretty careful to avoid any exposure to sports news.
Yes,
I
same.
have been quick to change it. I watched that evening. I watched Game of Thrones as a pick-me-up, which is a very unusual thing to do because it's such a bleak series. But I
Right.
felt much better after that. In any case, you could see Steph thinking, he's kind of dribbling. I don't even remember who was guarding him. Someone at the perimeter, and he was trying to put the moves on him. And you could just see his mindset, like, okay, this is where I guess I have to be the superstar now and take over and make
Yeah.
these big shots. And of course, he missed. I think he missed 4 of those 8 shots down the stretch, and he just was kind of caught between. He wasn't a point guard, but he wasn't the guy to make the dagger shots either. You could just see him mentally sort of crumble, and that was another thing that happened in slow motion, kind of over the course of the playoffs. And it all came to a head there in those last 3 games, and especially the end of Game 7.
Well, and that, add to that his behind the back pass, that was it was exactly the kind of behind the back pass that I would throw in a pickup game, meaning that it went nowhere near the intended target and went flying out of bounds. And you just
Bill, you would have made that behind the back pass in a pickup game and then beat yourself up over it because it's such a terrible play to make. And here he's doing it in the last 5 minutes of the NBA Finals, and there was no reason for it. And just they never got in any rhythm. And so that was the play, right? Where I kind of, what the fuck are you doing? And, I was, in real time, I was complaining really badly about that play to the point that people were saying, okay. But
Yeah.
that was it.
I managed to watch the game alone, as I normally do. All of the, I know you don't like baseball and the Giants, but I'll just touch on them a couple times in comparison.
I think it fits into the larger conversation.
Into the larger conversation. So their clinching games for their World Series, I watched 2010 alone, 2014 alone, 2012. I drove to our mutual friend Charlie Crabtree's house because the game was in hand. So I came to watch like the last couple innings.
Sure, I think they sweep that series also.
Yeah, they swept that series. So it was like at that point, it's safe. It was safe to go and jump on him, whether he liked it or not, on his couch after they won that one. But also Warriors clinching game last year, I watched by myself. I don't like the influence of people, and to spare them my madness.
No, and that's a fair
I don't
thing.
watch it in front of them.
It drives us all crazy, but you probably the craziest. And that's another thing over the I've been thinking. Anytime this happens, you sort of examine your fandom, right? Like,
Right.
Why is it so important to me? Why would I let something like this get me so down?
Absolutely.
Why do I
Every
get to
time.
the point where I feel like I need to blow it up to just even like, make it another week, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just like forget it. I'm done with sports. And that's part of it too, is those superstitions that you talk about. You start believing in them a little bit, right? You must, or you would stop doing them.
Absolutely. And I have told, like, I tell my son, in order to try and raise him to not be like me with sports, I constantly tell him, look, nothing that you do is going to influence the game unless somehow you become a coach or a player right now and you go out on the court. Nothing you do. You can sit in a treehouse. You can sit on this part of the couch, that part of the couch. But to me, it's like I got to watch it alone. I got to sit here and, before the game, I have to do this. What a psychological weight to put on myself. And we all do it. So many people do it. It's so common.
I think everybody does it. When you share notes with people who are also disappointed, and by the way, this, I think it affected the whole Bay Area more so even than if the Giants had lost, because everyone
Wider
sort
scope.
of, yes, it's a wider scope. It's the one team. So, and I was in the Valley Fair Mall last night. I had reservations at Din Tai Fung, and
Nice.
and I had totally thought that I was fine. I was clear of it. And then, of course, right there in the mall, there are people wearing Warrior shirts. There's Warrior shirts, in all these stores. There's a Warrior store. There's with the 73 shirts all up there, and their Western Conference champion shirts, which is incredibly disappointing. And then right next door is the Sharks as well, right? So they have a team store. So, it was all, it brought that all back to mind. What we were talking about, superstitions. So, well, and right there, like all these people buy shirts and put their banners up, wave the flags, and a lot of money kind of down the tubes too, because needless to say, the Warrior store was empty. It was the last thing I wanted to look at. But
It's like having PTSD at that point. Mild.
yeah, they should just board that thing up right away, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to want to buy a Western Conference champion shirt, especially now. So, but back to the superstition. So, you tell your son not to be that way. Can't affect it. And meanwhile, you and me and our mutual friend Steve had a run whereby we basically felt that we had to take, images of the Country Bear Jamboree and turn them into memes, and in your case, some pretty sophisticated videos to sort of power up and charge up the Warriors. I couldn't dream of not having like sent the proper memes or something beforehand, or, I started blaming myself at one point during the game because I had sent a halftime text out and I had never done that. I thought maybe break it up that way. And, you start second guessing. I start telling my wife where to sit, and it's insanity. But you're like so vested in this weird way in these sports and thinking that you have some say-so over it that it becomes inescapable. And it's a lot right now to untangle myself from, because, now it didn't work, and, what went wrong, how much of it is real, and all that.
How much of it is your responsibility directly?
Right.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. I'm accountable, I guess. So are we all. But not. It's crazy.
To touch on that for those of our audience, which is probably all of them, that wouldn't know this, Bobby and I and our friend Steve, we got into. I'll make this quick, but we got into this idea that James McAdoo, like the 15th man on the Warriors, looked like one of the bears from the Country Bear Jamboree at Disneyland. So we started sending ourselves these texts with pictures of those bears last year. And it got to this point where it became ritualistic. And if you didn't send a bear at the right time, or if you sent the wrong kind of bear, it somehow in our minds affected the results of these games. And we would send each other other types of memes, just, nonstop throughout these group texts during games and between games. And I sent a meme to you of Tom Berenger in Major League as Jake Taylor.
Yes.
Saying, the meme said, there's only one thing left to do, win the whole fucking thing. Bob points out to me that meme is actually representative of a Cleveland team that hadn't won in a million years. And you know what, Bob? They never won after that.
They never won after that.
They never won after that. And I take all the blame. I should have gone to the exit interviews at Oakland yesterday and said, no, stop. Draymond, no, hold on, everyone. You're all off the hook. Also, Klay Thompson wore a Dodger hat to the Giants game, and they never went after that either.
Yeah, there's a million things they did wrong, and only some of them were in the game.
Right. There's and Aisha Curry tweeting.
It was one of those things where the wheels fell off in every way that they could. Starting with the supposed nut swipe, which they punished him for after the fact, and I think maybe that was sort of the start of it, because that was game in hand. Shouldn't have maybe even been on the court, and because all that served to do was kind of like give the other players a chance to goad him into doing something like that. And LeBron, I think a lot of people, at least Warrior fans, and I think broader than that, will sort of think that the way LeBron took this series was pretty Machiavellian, where he sort of had these invisible strings in the league office and playing mind games on the floor and sort of being in the ear of Kiki Vanderway or the commissioner, whoever he needed to. And I think people will remember it as LeBron sort of doing things not in a basketball context to get the series.
Political maneuverings.
Absolutely. And the gamesmanship, too. Both of those things, which were hand in hand, right? He dangled his balls in front of Draymond Green until they got swiped, and then kind of went out of his way to make a stink of it in the press and who knows where else.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because, okay, so that was Game 4.
Right.
In Cleveland.
Game 4.
Okay. When that happened, Draymond Green said bitch or whatever to LeBron James as they were falling over. So LeBron James steps over him, which is, according to all former players that commented on that after, is the ultimate insult, right?
Bitch?
Even Charles no, not bitch, walking over.
Oh, walking over again.
Bitch was like, I think plenty of people had been called bitch, and it was like no big deal.
Right.
It's not like he's calling his daughter a cunt.
Right.
He's just calling LeBron James a bitch for playing like a bitch. LeBron James, puts his balls right in his face. He flails out with his fist.
When he didn't need to step over him at all.
Yeah, there were infinite routes that he could have taken other than balls on head. So Draymond Green takes a swipe, and they get into it.
And I think he was really pushing him off, like, get off me. And then in the process of that, put his hand near his
He didn't even
balls.
hit his nuts.
No.
It was just a swipe. If anything, he got shorts, maybe. But here's what happened. So that goes on. Referees review it. They each get a foul. Play on. For about 40 minutes after the game, because
Well, hold on, because there was the double foul, but not only that, after the double foul, they went and they reviewed it on site to see if it was a flagrant.
They reviewed it on site,
and
to
it
see
was
if
not.
It was a flagrant, and it was not. Exactly. And so, case closed. Boys will be boys. Play on. After the game, after every win, I would consume all channels of NBA media until I fell asleep. ESPN, NBA TV, the local broadcast, everything. So I'm watching NBA TV because Charles Barkley has Draymond on as a guest.
I remember that.
And he's talking to him about the LeBron thing, and at the time, this is 15 minutes after the game, Charles Barkley is saying to Draymond Green, hey, when someone steps over you, that's the ultimate insult. You got to hit him. You did the right thing. Everything's fine. Everybody's talking about it, but there's nothing about nuts. All of a sudden, here comes LeBron James to the podium, talking about, he hit me in the nuts. Tyronn Lue coming out talking about, he hit me in the nuts. We looked at the tape. They're saying, oh, do you think Draymond will get suspended? LeBron's like, no.
It didn't even occur to me that they were going to suspend him.
And it didn't occur to anyone until he came out there. And then all of a sudden, ESPN throws out this slug on its next segment. Will Draymond be suspended for Game 5? And I'm going to get a little conspiratorial here. ESPN, owned by ABC, showing the games. ESPN also showing the games on replays and so forth. All of a sudden, here's this opportunity to, if nothing else, generate controversy going into Game 5. Hopefully he gets suspended from their end, but even if not, they get a 3-1 game that will be more watched because of the storyline, even if Draymond Green plays.
And in a series that was essentially over at that point, they had at least some talking points and controversy to fill the time between the what was it 3 weeks before the next. Well,
right.
There's so much time between the games anyway. So yeah, minimally they got that out of it, and I did feel that the ESPN was sort of wishing it into existence, where it was nobody's headline until it was their headline.
Yeah, NBA TV with a bunch of guys on their panel that love to shoot their fucking mouth off to no end. No mention of it. No mention of it. All of a sudden, here comes ESPN, and they're starting the rallying cry to get him suspended. The whole next day goes by, no word. And then we find out that basically NBA says, well, we're going to review the play. What they meant by review was they launched like a Senate investigation into it. They were interviewing players. They were calling people. They were watching the video. They had all these people looking at it. A goddamn investigation, Bob. Just look at the. You've got 60 angles. I mean, honestly, how many cameras are at a game like that, right?
Yeah,
in 4K resolution.
Yeah, you got a pretty good idea.
You don't need to be interviewing people, and that's when. I mean, look, Stephen A. Smith, who love him or hate him.
Does anyone love him?
I like him.
Right.
But reason I like him is because he's kind of a Warrior hater, but I also think he's pretty fair when it comes to things like that. And he was outraged by it.
He's always outraged.
Well, he's always outraged, but he was outraged for something that I totally subscribed to his outrage for. So it was, it was nice. It was like having a kindred spirit because he has a voice.
I guess that's the sweet spot for Stephen A. Smith.
Exactly. If he lines up with you, then it's great because it's like, he's representing my outrage by proxy. So I got to enjoy that. So he was screaming about it. Bayless didn't like it. Everybody didn't like it. And Barkley didn't like it. The only people who liked it were fucking Cleveland fans. That's it. And the worst part is going back to us talking about when did we kind of feel like it was possible that the Warriors weren't going to win. After the entire day that they didn't issue a ruling, they said the ruling will come tomorrow morning. So my son is having like a pool party, like pizzas and stuff. They're jumping in the pool. They're running around. I'm sitting outside, on a lawn chair with my phone, literally on Twitter, pulling my thumb down to swipe for refresh every minute. And finally, there you go. Suspended. The whole timeline fills up with it. And at that point, I texted you immediately, texted Steve, texted Charlie. My stomach sank. And honest to God, I felt at that moment the series is over. They're going to lose game 5. They're going to lose game 6. Anything can happen in game 7. They're fucked.
And that's exactly how it went down. The Bogut injury.
And Bogut gets hurt.
So we have to play Festus Ezeli, heavy minutes in Game 7, which was, that's a result of, there's this domino thing going on. But, I don't know that they needed to play Festus in Game 7. But, yeah, good recap. That's about how it was. And that was, I think we will remember it, fans of Golden State Warriors will remember it as this sort of unfair thing that was taken and decided off of the basketball court in many ways. Now, all that to say that the Warriors still they only need to win one more game.
Just one game.
And they hadn't lost 3 games all year and only lost twice.
They lost 9 games in the playoffs and 9 games in the regular season, which is amazing. And to go back to...
Which somewhat stands to reason because the playoffs is going to be a higher level of competition.
For sure.
And clearly they were just, tired or something. And you know how basketball is too, where, you can be playing well for a while and then, and it kind of goes away. There's rhythm, there's energy. And, we joke about how we don't have any say-so in a superstition sort of way of affecting the game. But, you only need to look at the home and away records of teams across the league for the history of basketball and compare that with the old Coach Dale that, every court is the same dimension.
Right.
To know that, a fan's energy really does, change things and it's more than any other sport, you can tell by a team's body language how they're playing, and it just sort of comes and goes, which it's not intuitive to me because it seems like basketball, like the better team should just beat the inferior teams. So if you beat a team by 30 points twice, it stands to reason that that other team would really not have much of a chance of beating you at any time. And that's just, it's not the case. There's these major shifts, and momentum, I think, is real in basketball.
I used to think that momentum in basketball was overrated. After watching this series,
and I would say the series before, the Oklahoma City series.
And absolutely, the Warriors versus OKC, they took momentum and they never looked back. So I'm going to rescind that opinion and say that it is absolutely true. I think in baseball, it isn't. Because as the cliche in baseball is, your momentum is as good as your next starting pitcher.
Right.
So if you take...
That would be like in basketball, like if you had LeBron play one game and the next game, you had another best or most important player.
Exactly. The next day, Richard Jefferson is your guy. Because and you take something in baseball like one guy, 2014, again, starting to bring up the Giants, but 2014 Giants World Series, Bumgarner pitches Game 5, complete game, dominant. Game 6 in Kansas City won that game by like 10 runs, right? So they'd be feeling the momentum. But they weren't, because they knew Madison Bumgarner was going to be coming back in Game 7 for God knows how long. So as soon as that game started, as soon as it was like a tie game or the Giants had a lead, as soon as Madison Bumgarner walks out of the bullpen, all of that 10-run momentum is gone. And there's no way to do that in basketball, unless maybe you're Willis Reed coming out with his bum foot. Maybe that.
Right, or, and like I said, I think the crowd has some say-so in it. But definitely in basketball, you can go into funks, and then you get into rhythms, and, you're playing with 5 other guys. That's another reason why Draymond going out for a game is sort of everything gets, if you want to make a baseball analogy, maybe it's like facing a knuckleball pitcher one day, and so your rhythm's off, and you need some time to get it back. And, they lost Game 6 pretty badly, I think, so... And that was the weird thing about this series. And, I don't know if it speaks to that there is momentum or not, but, the first 6 games were all blowouts. So even though it was evenly matched, it wasn't evenly matched where we were getting good games. It was one team would win big, and it didn't matter if it was home or road, right? Because they both lost before Game 7, a home game. So, there'd be one team would dominate, and then the other team would dominate. And to me, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. I've played a little basketball, nothing official, but, it seems to me like when you have 5 good players against 5 players who are not as good, that, you can just kind of replicate the results over and over again. But that's not the case. There were these wild swings.
Well, and I think in game adjustments or between game adjustments too, it's like, Cleveland continually started to recognize all of Steph Curry's glaring weaknesses, which I want to get into. His defense, isolating Kyrie Irving against Steph Curry.
And surprisingly, LeBron had so many matchups against Steph Curry. I don't know why the Warriors couldn't make that adjustment defensively, but how many times did you see LeBron backing down or facing up, 16 feet from the basket, Steph?
They didn't.
And there's nothing
they made
they
that
could do.
adjustment by Game 7, which was they adjusted that Game 7, so LeBron had very little ISO opportunities against Curry, but by then it was too late. But Curry, I want to talk about him for a moment, because I think that in this series, there's the whole debate all year about who's better, Curry or LeBron. Curry gets unanimous MVP. He gets 1,000 commercials. He's #1 jersey sales in America. He's changing the game. Greatest shooter ever, which I think is not arguable. But, then they get into all these other things that he is so great at, right? He's a great handle, great passer.
Which are all true.
Well, to an extent, though. Great. He has a good handle. He's a good passer. But look, 6 assists a game for the season, 3 assists a game for the finals, with more turnovers than assists.
So are you saying that the 6 assists in the regular season is not an impressive number?
Not really, for a point guard.
But if you look at Warrior team assists, I think they probably set some sort of record. So that was what made it so beautiful. Is yes, Steph was the MVP, and deservedly so. They did win 73 games. The MVP is granted, it's given to the regular season performance.
Sure, fair enough for him.
And he, the Warriors' style of play, and specifically Steph's, is it's very exciting. It's made new fans. I know plenty of people who were not basketball fans before can watch this product. It's a lot more entertaining. It's a lot more lovable, and it's exciting. It's exciting. So the 6 assists for Steph is okay when Draymond Green also averages 6 or 7 assists, and everyone is getting some. When you get assists from your center, and that was the beauty of their game, was the movement, the flow. It was all there. So you didn't need a point guard in the traditional sense to distribute, right? You needed somebody to key the offense, get things a-rolling. And then in Steph's case, because he's such a great scorer, the finals notwithstanding, that's fine. It's kind of the ultimate weapon of destruction, that 3 ball. So I don't think that Steph was ever going to be a John Stockton or Steve Nash type that's looking to pass first, because why would he when he's such a great shooter? But also the system and the team seemed to be in place to have this, free-flowing offense that, how many nights did they have 30 team assists? It was incredible.
It's not, I mean, I get it. He doesn't, the way their system plays, he as a point guard does not need to be Chris Paul or whatever. However, when it comes down to the final 3 minutes of Game 7 of the NBA Finals, he needs to be a point guard. He can look to score first, but fucking behind the back pass.
Yeah, he blew
while
it.
trapped.
But wouldn't you say that the whole team and
Chris Paul would never do that,
coach
as much as I hate him.
Yeah, well, Chris Paul, when he wins one Western Conference final game, we can, talk about what kind of winner he is.
Right.
So, fuck you, Chris Paul. Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck off.
So it was the whole team failed, right? It was like there was not the motion. Everyone was kind of winging around. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where he was sort of waffling in this, okay, is it time for me to take the game over now, or shouldn't we run some of that Warrior offense? And as a result, neither of those things happened in the last 4 minutes and 39 seconds of that game.
Which I think is he deserves a great amount of blame for, because he is, as we talked about earlier, he's looking for the dagger.
Well, one way or another. Either he's the superstar and he makes a play to score the basketball, or he's the point guard and he finds an opportunity for somebody. He didn't make any plays, but nobody made any plays.
Well, but
except LeBron James.
Look at what happened. Draymond Green had 22 points, I think, or more than that.
He scored a lot.
He had like 5 touches in the second half. Clay was getting no touches. Clay was getting to the point where if he got the ball, he was launching it up, because I think his attitude was like, I don't know the next time I'm going to get the goddamn ball.
Yeah, right. No, you're right. Steph Curry deserves the major part of the blame for that, because one way or another, either he's got to make the plays. He's the star of the team, and the supposed leader, right? So it falls to him, and that's what you take when you're the MVP of the league, twice.
Another thing that is glaringly annoying to me about Steph is that after the game, and then yesterday when they had their secondary, exit interviews, when everybody cleaned out their locker in shame, they asked.
I cannot watch that. Go ahead.
They asked. I just read. I read a couple articles.
Kind of like sick to my stomach.
No, it does, and I had a hard time. But I wanted to see how they answered for themselves. I wanted to see what they had to say. And what Curry was saying was, "We'll be back." He's talking about "we'll be back." To me, a lot of the problems that the Warriors had during the season, and I know it's hard to say they had problems because they won 73 games. But a lot of their issues in the season had to do with underestimating their opponents and overestimating themselves. And I think that happened several times during the finals, several times early in the OKC, and still after being humiliated and collapsing in the NBA finals, he runs right back to his locker room talking about "we'll be back." It's not easy, for the love of God. Have some humility. He's always been a great guy about humility. And now it's like, I just feel like the sense of entitlement is just overcoming his previous humility combined with killer instinct. I think and it's evidenced also by, in the beginning of the series, the first 2 games, he looked like he was on drugs. He really did. He was spaced out. He got the ball stolen one time because he was talking
I feel like, yeah, I remember that. And, maybe one day there'll be more told to that story, and we can speculate all we want. But he looked like he was on some cocktail of barbiturates and hallucinogens, and he did not look right. I mean, there were many images of him looking very glazed on the bench or even on the court, and the way he played matched that.
Steve Kerr had to ask him, "Are you all right?"
Right. He essentially benched him in the middle of a game, not during his regular rest. And yeah, we saw him say that, "Are you all right?" And he never did get right.
And there was a clip of him miming playing a PlayStation game during Game 1 of the finals, glazed over eyes, with a fake PlayStation controller in his hands, watching the game. The hell is that? And my good buddy Stephen A. Smith was the only one, and this is again why I have to point him out as him being my proxy for having a voice in all of this. He literally said that Steph Curry looked like he was on drugs.
Well,
he actually said that, and he's the only everyone else, people are like, "Oh, he seemed a little disengaged." A little disengaged. He looked like he was on fucking drugs.
And that's not the time to be disengaged. And maybe the
Right.
injuries are, part of it, and we'll find out that he was more injured than
Well, he says he's not having surgery.
not having surgery.
Not having surgery.
He did opt out of the Olympics. He was kind of the first major guy to do that. And it's 2 very long seasons where he played for, all the way from October to June. Now, the counter argument to that is, well, LeBron's played that long. How many times has he made the finals in a row? 6 times?
Right.
So
right.
LeBron has done that 6 times, and I think he's made an Olympics in there as well. So, is it just, maybe it's just conditioning or something?
It has a lot to do with that. I mean, look at LeBron. I mean, the guy is an Adonis of.
But even his most
muscle.
famous failure was that time in San Antonio where his body broke down. I mean,
Yeah.
it does happen. It's just, it was surprising that Steph never bounced back, I guess.
Well, I think Steph, injury-wise, it was more than they were willing to give away, which is as it should be. You don't want to be talking about Steph's hurt all the time, but the mental mistakes, unacceptable. Injuries to your knee and your shoulder does not make you decide to throw a ball right to Richard Jefferson in Game 3. Not Richard Jefferson stole it. He threw it to Richard Jefferson. I couldn't even. I actually was watching that game, and I rewound it to see who he was trying to pass to. I couldn't find anybody. There was one warrior 15 feet directly behind Richard Jefferson. He throws it right to Richard Jefferson. Well, so those kind of things have nothing to do with my knee hurts.
No, it's terrible decision making. Or if you want to go the conspiracy route, he was directed to, throw the game so that LeBron could, if the NBA is really the WWF, then maybe he was directed to and didn't like it to the point where he was moping about doing the job. So he wasn't going to pretend. He was going to make it look good.
Right. And maybe then him coming back yesterday and saying we'll be back was like, oh
yeah,
no,
they told him
we will be back.
In the script,
I was promised a championship next year for doing this, so we will be back. Don't worry about it. But let's talk about the conspiracy thing for a moment, because the word conspiracy is obviously not really applicable, but I like to throw it around on this show because it's Pop Talking Aliens. Draymond Green getting suspended, and we talked about it before in terms of the ESPN headline and how it wasn't a story. So taking it from there, Draymond Green was suspended, in my mind, not as an act of conspiracy, but as an act of blatant opportunism by the NBA. And we've seen, here's the thing, people say, oh, that's bullshit because Draymond Green had it coming because he was kicking people in the nuts and stuff. That's bullshit. The NBA has a track record. You can get into the conspiracy, that you get into the 2002 Western Conference Finals with the Lakers and the Kings, right? Where the whistles were constantly fouling out Kings. And just everything. Tim Donaghy.
It did happen. I mean, there is actual, it did happen because of the Tim Donaghy.
Right. So that game was rigged. But there are also things that are far more transparent that the NBA does that show this sort of principal's office mentality that they have. And I'll give you 2 examples. The first is a couple of years ago, Greg Popovich and the Spurs had a long-ass East Coast road trip. Like one of those ridiculous 6-game trips where you're playing in Philadelphia one night and then you're playing in New Jersey the next night or Brooklyn or whatever.
And the NBA scheduling has come under fire the last couple of years also for these road trips.
Right.
The San Antonio one specifically, though, is so that they can accommodate a rodeo that comes into the Alamo Dome or wherever they're
Right. Well, that's, whatever. But so they get to the end of the road trip, and the last game was against Miami. And LeBron was still on Miami at that point. This is the year before he went to Cleveland. That was the big Sunday NBA matchup. Spurs, Heat. Might have even been a rematch of the finals before. I'm not sure. But nevertheless, huge game, huge ratings. Popovich decides to flip off the NBA by not starting all of his star players. Just throwing the game away, saying, I don't give a fuck if we win this. Fuck you, NBA, for scheduling us like this. You're getting nothing. You're going to watch Scrubs versus Miami on Sunday. And the league fined him for not playing the starting lineup of their choosing.
I'm sure Popovich knew what he was doing. I mean,
of course
he's
he did.
king of gamesmanship. But yeah, the NBA obviously should butt out and let the coach the team how he wants to.
Of course, but this to me is a glaring example of the fact that the NBA absolutely will influence a game that is supposed to make money. And if it does, if that is taken away from them, then they're going to fuck with the coach and tell him how to run his lineup. The other thing that the NBA has done, do you remember a couple years ago when Chris Paul was going to be traded, I think, to the Lakers?
Yes.
They vetoed the trade because they thought the Lakers were going to be too good. So again, they're stepping in and saying, this isn't how we want it to go. Why not just do a fantasy draft every year, write down the scores of all the games, coronate a champion, and be done with it?
Right. So, and the thing with Chris Paul to the Lakers is, that was them stepping in. They didn't have a rule in place. Now, I think it is in the best interest of professional sports, which are associations, right? I mean, it's not, there's the individual teams, but they function as a larger association.
Right.
So, and, baseball is probably at this point the most guilty of this, is getting, you want every market to feel like they're vested and have some chance to win the championship. So, if the Lakers had some kind of super team assembled again, then, that's not in the best interest of the league to, for making money. So, yes, there are invisible hands and not so invisible hands, because that was very public, at work for the NBA to kind of make it how they want. But I think the NBA would say in that case, and in the case of things like, revenue sharing and luxury taxes and so on, is that it's for competitive balance, which is, I think everyone wants that, except for the Lakers and the Yankees.
Right. But see, again, it's like there's a slippery slope. With the Popovich thing, you're fining him for not playing certain players. You're opening the door to start saying, yeah, Steph Curry's not playing a lot of minutes. I'd like to see him in the fourth quarter because the ratings are trailing off. So, can you start doing that? Otherwise, we're gonna fucking fine you. And why didn't they do the veto trade thing when LeBron went to Miami? I mean, that stacked the deck against everybody.
You're right. Well, because that wasn't a trade? Was it just
why didn't they
LeBron
just tell him,
free?
right in the middle of his decision broadcast, ring, 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 this is David Stern, this decision is not going to fly.
Well, and I would offer that the NBA is not in the position to tell LeBron James what to do, and rather it's probably vice versa.
Right, he gets a pass.
And I think that's sort of what was, proved in this last series by all LeBron's collaborating with the NBA commissioner's office.
Which goes to show that Steph Curry, for as much as a marketing jewel that he is, when you look at the lack of foul calls on him, I mean, he goes to the paint and scores, gets fouled, it's almost never called. He gets very few and ones. Obviously, as we know, look at his fucking arms sometimes when he's sitting on the bench. I mean, he looks like he's been raped.
What?
The cuts, the bruises.
Oh,
on his
right,
arm.
right.
Klay too. Yeah, I mean, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson oftentimes look like they've just been in some sort of like cats have attacked them. Scratches, bruises. They're getting held and bumped on every screen. And you can't call all of them, but once in a while, more than maybe once a game, which is about how often it happens now, you'd like to see an offensive or a defensive off the ball foul for pummeling and pulping guys coming off screens.
It is. It's a real problem in NBA basketball. And it's hard, it must be really hard to call, but sometimes it seems like there's just no consistency as to what is a foul and what is not. And it's not called fairly either way. I know people who've totally stepped away from being fans of the NBA because, as they said, that the foul calls just seem completely arbitrary. And there's something to that. And then when you get really into it and you're looking at who the referees are going to be and you can kind of decide what game it's going to be based on who the officiating crew is, that's problematic. That's not and it shouldn't matter who the NBA ref crew is. It should be called by the rules. And they need, if they need more training or to come to some sort of uniform decision about what is a foul, then they better do that, because when you look at it, it's like, oh, this guy's refereeing, so it's going to be a tighter game, or there's going to be more free throws, or this is going to be great for James Harden. That's not great. No.
And the fact that we and our friends going into each game were looking up the referee staff prior to the game, you shouldn't need to do that. And the other thing, the way they operate, if you want to talk about rigged or whatever, I mean, I don't think the games are rigged, so to speak, but I think there's heavy influence coming from the league and being handed down to the referees. Not in terms of like, this team has to win, but you know what, LeBron's not getting foul calls enough. This is happening too much. Bogut's moving screens. Watch out for that. And I was talking to our friend Charlie Crabtree, who said very truly, in Game 6, I believe it was Game 6, the fouls between teams were 25 each. So it looks great. Oh, yeah, even fouls. What are you talking about? Even Steven. No. The timing of the fouls that were called against the Warriors versus the timing of the fouls that were called against Cleveland were absurd. Steph Curry getting early fouls, early foul trouble. Every time the Warriors start to make a run, Cleveland at the free throw line. Again, I don't know if you go so far as to say that that's rigging, but there's something very wrong with that.
Well, and in that was the one where Steph fouled out and threw his mouth guard on it. So
ticky-tack fouls.
And then, so see, and this is where it becomes not enjoyable anymore. So, I think we all agree that after Game 4, LeBron made the big stink and turned it into something else. It was off court. He wanted to agitate the powers that be to get Draymond suspended and whatever else. And then 2 games later, Steve Kerr, because of the way that Game 6 was called, went out and he purposefully got the $25,000 fine and was also angling. So it becomes this level of gamesmanship that's like not very appealing, because it's just, as you called it, the principal's office, right? So all the coaches and players just become like these tattletales that are going on, and they're like petitioning to get calls, and they're essentially spending money in some regard, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows they're going to get fined, but he knows that if he's the squeaky wheel, that will have some bearing on the refereeing of the next game, and that's pretty ugly.
It's horrible, and that is one of his inheritances from Phil Jackson, because Phil Jackson used to do that all the time. Yeah. Constant complaining about the refs, and then in turn, getting calls. And I think, could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Phil Jackson doing that was one of the reasons they instituted an automatic fine. Because after every game, he would just sit there and campaign, And Steve Kerr was naming refs in that. So he went all out for it.
He knew he was going to get fined. It was just more gamesmanship.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, in the NBA, gamesmanship, it does. It pays off. It's rewarded. Well, go ahead.
One other thing, conspiracy-wise, is that, as much as I examine conspiracies and UFOs and all that stuff, and I always like to keep, a door open to the possibilities. I don't really, I don't know if you've heard any of my episodes about UFOs, I always leave the door open. I don't really come down too hard on one side or the other. It's generally, I take a more skeptical view, but I don't like when someone just shuts it off and says, "No, there's no such thing, dude." You know, you got to look a little deeper. But I get easily freaked out, even in at my age, about weird things. And what struck me as weird is after Game 4, before the Draymond suspension, maybe even before Game 4, all these articles coming out and like weird videos on YouTube that were like, bet the Cavs, Cavs are going to win in 7, bet the Cavs, everywhere. I couldn't find anything about, the Warriors got this sealed up. It was all these weird conspiratorial videos. And granted, most of them were like guys sitting in their room where they don't even bother to turn on a fucking lamp so you can see them.
Well, those are the guys who would know.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Is like these weird ass guys in shadows might be the guys who know this stuff. It was just weird. It was just weird to me. Obviously, it means nothing. It's just a bunch of bullshit. But
well, so I don't know. So you
the
talked
prevailing
earlier.
wisdom was that the Warriors weren't going to win even at that point.
Yeah, it's a little frightening that all came true because I remember you sharing a lot of that.
Yeah.
I was very confident that the Warriors were going to win. They just looked like such the better team after 2 games, and after 4 games. It was just, no chance. And then the Draymond Green thing, you talked about it. So, is there a conspiracy? I would say this is certain. The NBA, in that instance, put a lot of thought because it was 2 days, right? 2 days after it happened. So, and as you said, they got all the angles and stuff. It's like, what does it take to say, is it a flagrant foul or not? So, you say they interviewed the players and all, which is kind of, that's strange enough. But
that's
just that they would take that long to come up with it. Just like, what all were they weighing? And it was probably all these things that you talk about. I mean, there's money at stake. There's, who knows what? Who knows if there's some grand plan or something. But it was the perfect opportunity for them to change that series up, and they thought long and hard about it, and that much is certain, right? Like they thought about it, and you cannot think that long about if it's a flagrant foul or not, right? You can't. There's no,
especially when they decided on the floor that it was not a flagrant foul,
especially then, and definitively, and so the fact that they took that long to think about it bothers me. It's like, what were they thinking about,
and who were they talking to, and what were they asking? And how much of this prior history shit? I mean, because it's gotten to the point where I earlier mentioned there's a new video out that, or maybe I mentioned this to you before the podcast. Either way, let's talk about it. There's a video that came out today saying Draymond Green kicked Kyrie Irving in Game 7. You can find the video. Draymond Green barely picks his fucking foot up off the floor. It's nowhere near Kyrie Irving. It's just like a little flick of the foot as he's coming down for a rebound. It's not one of those flailing things that he does. It's not like, up to his hip. I don't even think his goddamn knee bent. And they're like, oh, did he kick Kyrie Irving? And that's what, so how long now are we going to have to deal with that? Draymond Green kicking people. Like every single time his leg flails, Senate investigation, they're going to have to, Draymond Green's going to have to come sit in a courtroom and defend himself while they launch NBA investigations with Kiki Vandeweghe. How about a former ref? Can we get that? Steve Javy does the.
Do we really want that?
I'd rather have a former official than Kiki Vandeweghe was like a fucking journeyman.
Yes.
He gets to make the call.
And
it's not even him making the call. Adam Silver's up on it.
Who knows who's making the call?
Oh,
Probably
Jesus.
just LeBron James.
I think pretty much, yeah. Well, and anonymous Warriors were being quoted about that, and one of them said LeBron probably made the call himself. Understandably, the Warrior was not going to reveal himself, but an anonymous Warrior said LeBron probably made the call himself.
Yeah, that's probably true, because he's a bitch.
Well, and he is a bitch. He deserves it. Although I did see him and Draymond Green giving an honest hug after the end of Game 7.
Well, that's all well and good.
Great that they buried the hatchet. It makes me feel so much better.
And congratulations to the people of Cleveland. I'm glad that they have some self-worth now.
Fuck them.
No, of course.
There's
I'm
character to be built.
I'm being sarcastic. I
know.
Good for them. They've suffered or whatever. It's just too bad it had to go down like this. Anytime this happens, I kind of have to re-explore my own fandom and why I put so much into it. This year's Warriors, obviously, they were required viewing once they jumped out to that unbelievable start, 24 wins to start the season. So it was like you couldn't miss any of it, you know? And so you pay so much attention and you devote all this time and 106 games, and it comes down to that, and then you feel this crippling disappointment, and you wonder, you know, why did I bother with all of this?
Well, I mean, a couple of things is one is that for me, there's a little bit of a cushion because they won last year. So it's not as hard. I mean, if they were still championship-less and they didn't win last year and it all came down to this year, I mean, I would be crushed. But again, yeah, I wonder why. Like, well, why does it matter to me?
Well,
so
let me touch on that before you go to the other. So for me, it was sort of the opposite. The fact that they won last year and then set the record for wins this year, and over the course of all those months and games, built it up so that they were on the precipice of having this thing where we could have always, the rest of our life, said, wow, that was really one of the all-time great teams.
Right.
They, you know, back to back, they set the record, 140 wins over 2 seasons, and, you know, we say, you know, it was getting to the point this year where all those old timers were coming out and talking down, you know, so you knew that they had something special going on when, you know, Magic Johnson, you know, or Scottie Pippen are saying that we would have beat him. It's like, well, they were in the conversation though. They had to actually think about it.
They had the fact that they had to say anything. Yeah, that says a lot.
So now, you know, I worry about, are they going to like the 2004 Detroit Pistons, you know, or, you know, where it was kind of a one-off thing, and then they went back and lost, and then kind of fizzled slowly after that, you know, or maybe now moving forward, they'll be like the Spurs or something, where they'll be good for 5, 6, 7, 8 years and kind of always be contending, which would be fine.
I think that will be the case. There's too much talent. I think it really comes down to an adjustment of attitude about how fucking great they are. Because I really feel like with Game 5, no Draymond, their attitude was sort of like, well, I'll just try to get through it.
But
in
even
Game
with
6,
that
we'll see what we
attitude,
can do. And they get blown out by 20 points in the first quarter. It's like they don't understand what they're up against.
And I know they shouldn't have been in that position, but by the time there's 5 minutes left to go in Game 7, that wasn't the problem, was it? I mean, I don't see how, you know, it wasn't like they were sleepwalking anymore. I'm sure they were trying their hardest, although, or just by then it was just too late.
I think by then it was too late. I do think that they came out and obviously they gave a much better effort, but they also did a bunch of stupid shit early. The way Cleveland was shooting in the first quarter of Game 7 and in the second quarter, the Warriors should have had like an 18-point lead. They had a 7-point lead because they were still doing bullshit on their end, and Draymond Green was the reason. I mean, singularly, he was the reason that they had a 7-point lead. I mean, if he's missing threes, Cleveland's missing threes, then you know it might be a 3-point lead one way or the other. And then the Warriors come out in quarter number 3. Anderson Varejao playing heavy minutes. It's stinking up the place. Not being taken out, even though Spates had, you know, I don't want to get too sports radio about, you know, questioning subs and everything, but questionable choices by Steve Kerr. And, you know, at that point in the game, midway through the quarter, I thought, you know, midway through the third quarter, I thought this is the game right now. It's going to look spectacular at the end, but this is where the things happen. It's that lull, that third quarter lull where not a lot is happening except Anderson Varejao playing like shit.
But,
not
or,
the right
or
people getting the ball.
Festus Ezeli
Or
playing like
Ezeli.
shit. And it was just the unraveling, and it happened to everyone. It was a horror show unraveling, and it had to be everyone. So you said, you know, well, let's blame Steph, but you know, Kerr stopped being a good coach somehow, and they stopped playing great defense for stretches, and you know, basically everyone just the wheels just fell off, and it was all across the board, and it was this perfect storm of unraveling that caused that to happen. If you know, and it wasn't just Steph. If anyone had hit a shot in the last 4:39, it would be different. Or if one other player had stepped up in Game 5, you know, would have been different. So, you know,
Maybe next year they get Kevin Durant.
well, that's I guess the hot talk now is that they're going to really go after him, and that Durant said that if he doesn't resign with Oklahoma, that he'd like to be Warriors. And that would be something.
That would be something. Right now, I would surmise that outside of Kevin Durant's house, there are Cadillacs and Ferraris and Jaguars, all of them with, Golden State Warriors license plate frames, busloads of hookers, El Chapo himself delivering the finest cocaines, whatever it takes, helicopters dropping money into a swimming pool. Joe Lacob, and I'm so glad that as a Warrior fan we have an owner like this, is fucking crazy to win. I mean, they're saying he might even go over the luxury tax and just eat it and not care if he can get Durant, because he knows he has to strengthen the bench behind that.
Right.
And that he's willing to just say, whatever.
Well, that would be great.
Win at all costs, literally.
And it makes sense. Now, Durant couldn't have come over to the Warriors if they were defending two-time champions.
Right.
But now, I guess he could come over and be the guy who, oh God, fixes it and gets them to the higher level and over the mountaintop. That's the other and they were so close to just, I think I would have felt next year the way you felt this year, which is like, house money now.
Right.
Just win, just get in the playoffs and, just lose whenever. Like, it doesn't matter. It would have been sort of done, and you could have closed the book on a great team, and they were just so short, but they didn't quite get there, A lot of teams have won one championship.
Yeah, the whole 73 wins thing, and then the old players. And, the other thing about those old players coming out and talking about how, in my day, we would have defended Steph Curry this way, and it would have worked. Kind of proven right. In some ways, trapping him, putting him under pressure, making him work on defense, which is what they always said. They always say the Warriors are able to hide Steph Curry on defense. They put him on somebody in the corner, and then he can flash out and intercept, make a steal, knock the ball loose, start the fast break. Warriors had no fast break during this finals,
right?
Other than the first two games.
Well, so that's the rest of the team's defense to blame then for not putting Steph in a position where he could do that, right?
Yeah. Well, and also Cleveland was smart to find him and pick and roll on whomever was guarding him.
Right.
So, and LeBron James is a fantastic basketball player. He was very impressive, but I for me personally, I hate his game. I don't like physical basketball. It's boring to me. Guy tucking the ball in his shoulder like a running back and going full speed at the basket, dunking, crazy layups. That's fucking boring.
I think everyone, and the T-shirt sales, bear it out. I think everyone likes the Warriors game. I think people would rather watch that.
I would think so. I grew up watching, when I first got into basketball, it was Larry Bird that I liked. It was Larry Bird because he could shoot. It was Magic Johnson because of his passing. Then I started to get into Jordan when he got a little bit older, because then he had a jump shot. So he had a number of different ways he could beat you. Kobe got like that. I appreciated big men with some finesse like Hakeem. But, guys that just tuck and run to the basket and do great finishers, dunking. Fuck dunking. Yeah, well, give me a posterized dunk once in a while. I'm happy. But I don't want to see guys driving to the hole all the time. But a lot of people like that. A lot of people, that's what basketball is, and they don't like all this shooting.
Evidently, but that's what it takes to win. He made it pay off for him, so it was effective, if nothing else.
That and Kyrie Irving making crazy layups and
fall-away
shots.
Game
contested.
5, 17 of 24. Nothing you can do about that.
No,
although, if you had Draymond Green, probably he wouldn't have had such an easy time of it. So, again, a lot of what could have happened. But here we are,
Here we are, waiting for Kevin Durant.
How sad is that?
Or Paul Gasol.
Help us, Kevin.
I don't know. I mean, that could turn out to be, let's say he does sign there, that could turn out to be a total disaster. One basketball and 4 guys that want 25 points.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they'd learn to share.
They'd be fine.
I think they all just want to win a championship. Here's the thing. Durant already has his MVP and scoring championship. Steph's got MVPs, and did he win a scoring title this year, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think they're probably beyond that now, and they would like to have a super team. I kind of like the idea of having a super team. I thought we had a super team though.
Well, we did till a minute left. Oh, one other thing about Durant is that I think if Oklahoma City tries to sell him on the idea of winning championships, that's you're selling pitchforks in the wind, dude. They're not going to win championships. I don't see them winning a championship.
No, and not with you talk about the problem of sharing the ball with all those scorers, but boy, I almost think that Russell Westbrook dominates the ball more than Steph and Klay combined.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And he's going to take the hero ball shots when it comes down to it. So, the Warriors' pitch to Kevin Durant is going to be all the money in the world, all the years in the world, and, you legitimately have a shot at winning 3 fucking championships while you're here.
Well, that'll be great.
Kevin Durant, maybe Paul Gasol, maybe Al Horford. People are talking about Dirk Nowitzki. I don't know what the fuck that's
Yeah, I heard
about.
about that. Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah, if he wants to come off the bench for $2 million, fine.
Well, I think that's what it would be, right?
That's probably what they're going to offer him. You want to come off the bench for $2 million and replace Mo Spates? No. All right, get out. Nice talking to you. Goodbye. Are you really not going to watch next year?
It gets hard. I think after I had enough of baseball, and that's a whole, I won't open up that can of worms here, but I think since I stopped watching baseball about 2 years ago, a lot of great things have happened in my life, Bill.
That's true. You're married.
Yeah, I got married. I got the big promotion at work. I ran a half marathon in about an hour 40. Just, really just a lot of great self-improvement stuff with all that extra time. And I've gotten to the point now where I don't really miss baseball. And I think I could also go back and enjoy it. Like if I wanted to go see like a stadium I hadn't seen or go enjoy a baseball game, I think I could and not put any of the, pressure that goes in with, how ridiculous does that sound, right? The pressure of being a fan. But it's true because so go our emotions, right?
Exactly.
So I'm free of that. And but I think I could still just enjoy it as a game. So I'm not quite there with basketball yet, but when I think about all the things we talked about, the refs and the conspiracy and not feeling like it's just the amount of time that goes into it, and then pretty much you're just left holding this shitty bag. This is the time to reflect on how much, how important should this be to me, because it's an effort to step away from it and kind of, detach yourself emotionally. But like, these are the times that's like a possibility. So, it's a good time to sort of check in on it, see if it's, worth my time. And I think the Warriors are too much fun to watch to not come back and do it.
Exactly. And the other thing is, now you got a championship and then you got the agony of the worst defeat ever. Yeah, and you can afford to come back to the next season and just sort of keep an eye on things.
Well, that's what I love about sports.
And then, as the season goes on, maybe you start paying a little more attention. I had, I love baseball. I mean, I love it. And, in any form. I go to minor league games, if there's bunch of kids mixing it up on a playground on a little league game, I'll stop and watch. I love the game. But when my son was born, I think 4 years of Giants baseball went by that I could name a handful of players on those teams, and one of them was Barry Bonds, because this was when he was just trudging himself out there every year to break the record. And I remember when he broke the record, literally when he broke the record, I saw it on a highlight. I wasn't even watching. I didn't watch all the games for the build-up. Just like, did he get his record? All right, what did they do?
Well, there are other circumstances at play there.
Well,
also.
that too. It's like, can I watch his bogus record? But 4 years off of baseball, and then the Giants started getting good and exciting again, and then it was like it was worth watching. But I also had the entire decompression of years of just not paying attention to it. But that wasn't following an agonizing defeat. It was just following, just other things happen in life, as you were saying.
Well, it also ramped back up in a hurry when they were in the postseason in 2010.
And I got back into them in 2009, and I didn't know, obviously, they were going to win in 2010. But it's the same for the Warriors. You could take a step back without having to just absolutely, throw it off the cliff. And you keep boned up on what's going on,
Sure.
and then once playoff time comes, then you got a little more in the reserve to deal with it.
I'll say this: sports, it more so than any other form of entertainment, really, it does, has these emotional swings, right? It's not scripted. The storytelling is all there. And I'll say this about these finals: I mean, there was a lot of drama and a lot of subtext, and it was pretty fascinating. So you follow and kind of so it goes. And it's easy to say that it doesn't count for anything, and it's not real, and it's not. But it's more real than any other entertainment. I mean, you're watching this happen in real time. These are real people, and
right.
So, kind of hitching your emotional wagon to whether your team wins or loses is sometimes it seems a little silly, and thank God it's not real life, in the truest context. But it's it's real enough that. I don't know. It's I'm kind of still exploring my, the fandom thing.
Well, you got some time off from it to live your life, and then when it comes back, just dictate it on your own terms how you want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you know what else? Going back to the old conspiracy to keep the series going, 30 million viewers for Game 7.
Right. Set
they
a record.
expected 23. 23 would have been a bonanza. They got 30 for that shit.
It was incredible sports entertainment.
Yeah. So they got what they wanted. The Warriors made a lot of money. The NBA made a lot of money. And according to Steph Curry, no big deal. They'll be back in the finals next year. Lickety-lack.
Well, the Warrior store at Valley Fair Mall is not making much money on the result.
I have a Western Conference Finals t-shirt from last year that my son got me on Father's Day because the finals weren't over yet. Or he had gotten to me, maybe they were, but he had gotten it for me prior. A Western Conference champion shirt, just in case. Just in case they didn't finish the job. It's like, oh, you got to have some sort of souvenir. They did win the conference.
Well, and that's fine. That's a great shirt. There's nothing more worthless than a conference champion shirt the year after you were the champions of the league.
Ah, that's disgusting. That's like wearing a wild card champion shirt when you lost the wild card game. Division winners.
The year after winning the championship.
Well, especially, yeah, exactly.
My shirt's not sold yet. Like I can still wear my championship shirt from last year, but not for a while.
No. When it becomes more of a historical thing than a recent thing, in a couple more years, especially if they do finally maybe hopefully win one between now and whenever, then your 2015 World Champion shirt becomes like a novelty and like a cool.
The 2016 Western Conference.
No. The your original championship shirt.
Oh yeah.
If you wore that now, you look like an idiot.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah.
I almost threw mine away, but I thought, come on.
And that's what maybe another time too, we'll get a little bit more into the fan thing. So like, sometimes these people overdressed in their sports stuff. I say, gosh, that guy kind of looks like an idiot.
Yeah.
I try not to do that.
I've gone to t-shirts and a hat. I used to have jerseys and shit, with the names of other grown men.
It's fun and it's entertainment.
It's great.
It's just, I get displeased with myself when I'm this, disheartened or saddened by, the result of a game. It was just kind of the biggest game that there has been in my life was this Game 7. It felt like the Super Bowl.
Well, it's comparable in a way. I think any form of entertainment, depending on what it is and how it goes, can fuck with you like that if you invest a lot of time. I remember seeing the last episode of Lost. I invested so much time and thought into that show, and they give us this bullshit last episode. I remember being like very depressed the next day, being like, God, I was waiting for so much. It's just them sitting in a goddamn church.
The Lost is probably a pretty good comparison because that ran for so many seasons.
Yeah.
And there's the time investment thing also.
Character investment, time,
See, at least with that, you had someone you could really just stick a finger at as the writer or the showrunner.
Right.
It's like, wow, they fucked up. They didn't know what they were doing, and they painted themselves in a corner.
You were watching the writers fuck up real time in the room.
Exactly.
Making bonehead decisions right in front of you.
Yeah, where it just feels like this, real-time panic attack where it's just going on. And you don't really hear anything that's being said, and it's kind of surreal. That's how I felt in Game 7 at the end,
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens next year. We'll see what our threshold is for tolerance.
We'll see what we're made of.
We'll see what we're made of. We'll see what they're made of. Fucking cocky sons of bitches even after they lose. All right, guys, we'll see what you got. This has been Pop Talk and Aliens. My guest has been Bobby Chastain. It's been a great conversation, Bobby. Thanks for coming by again.
You bet.
Maybe after Rogue One comes out, we can dissect that for whatever it's going to be. It's not looking good so far for that movie.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be great.
I'm sure it'll be great, but it's in
I love
trouble
all the
at the
Star
moment.
Wars.
Yeah, it'll be good. All right, Pop Talk and Aliens, William Cleere. Thanks for listening. Cue the hot chick.
Pop Talk and Aliens, the William Cleere podcast.